1190 AM, NBC News, and the best in specialty programming.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station or Clear Channel Communications.
Welcome to the Automotive News and Entertainment Show with your host, Jim Proctor. For the next hour, automotive news, reviews, and celebrity interviews. And now, here's your host, Jim Proctor.
Good morning, North Texas, and welcome to another edition of the Automotive News and Entertainment Show. Check us out at theaneshow.com online. Also, like us on Facebook and send us messages on Twitter. I want to introduce the crew with us this morning. We have Joel the Gorilla.
What up?
The lovely model actress Jennifer Reid.
Hello, hello.
The coolest guy in Dallas, Paul Salfin.
Hi there.
Shu, handling all our media.
Howdy, howdy, Dallas.
And we have a couple of special guests this morning. A longtime good friend of mine, the Doctor of Credit and Senior Leasing Agent at D&M Leasing, David Hooks. Morning, David. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Jimbo.
We also have another special guest, and don't get the names confused, but we have another lovely Jennifer Reid, who is the Senior Director on the automotive side for Equifax. Jennifer, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
So later on, we're planning on having a cage match here that we're going to video. We're going to have Jen Reid versus Jen Reid. Anyway, what we want to get into this morning is we want to talk about credit. We want to talk about credit on the automotive side and some of the things that we have coming up. The automotive side and the credit side of the business has become a big issue here in the last few years. Of course, we had the downturn in the economy, the big layoffs, high unemployment. And, of course, one of the things that happened was, bad things happen to good people as far as bumps and bruises on their credit, issues like that. And that's what we want to talk about this morning, and that's why we have these people in here. So, David, one of the things I wanted to start off with you was what kind of ideas or thoughts can you have for those people who have had those issues? Like I said, bad things happen to good people. What would you recommend these people do at this point?
Well, Jim, first of all, it's really important, not just when we're talking about buying cars or anything else, to maintain a good credit score. And, of course, it affects so many different aspects of life now. But a lot of people, I think, focus on trying to remove derogatory old items, and that's certainly, especially if they're reported incorrectly, that's certainly something that you should look into. But I think people don't put enough importance on creating good, positive trade history moving forward. And there's just some simple rules of thumb as far as that goes. You want to maintain a few open lines of credit. If you've gotten to the point where you're not able to secure a credit card, there are avenues that you can get secured credit cards and things like that. Maintaining a real positive trade history really consists of a couple of things. You want to keep your limits about 30% of what your total credit limit is, and obviously pay it as agreed. And that's the best positive line that you can have. A lot of people think paying off your credit cards every month is positive. I think the repositories really want to see you be able to maintain and manage your credit. So leaving a small balance on there and managing it and rolling with it every month is probably a good bit of advice. The good news is that I think because the credit issue was so widespread, that a lot of the lenders are really taking a good look at the timing on when these little bumps and bruises happen. And as long as you've, again, reestablished positive trade history moving forward, they're more likely to give you a chance.
Well, some very interesting information. And Jennifer, I was just going to get with you. I mean, yesterday, we did an interview and we talked about a lot of this stuff on the Drew Pearson show with you and me and Drew and Paul. So let's get back into some of those conversations that we were having yesterday.
Sure. Well, we're seeing that 3 out of every 10 people that are getting a car today or car loan today have less than perfect credit. And you combine that with the millennial generation and that first-time owner, car buyer, there's a lot of people out there that don't have what you call, quote-unquote, the perfect credit. So it's something that I think from a business and industry perspective, it's really important that we work with those folks. We're seeing a lot of momentum in the car business right now, in order for that to continue, we need that population of folks to be coming in and being able to get access to credit. So, to David's point earlier, the lenders are buying deeper. They're going ahead and I think stepping outside of some of that traditional policies that they've had. But we really are trying to paint that picture that a customer is more than a score. So something to consider is things like employment history, stability. So there's a lot of things that come into the picture when you're buying a car. So I think it's important that folks understand that walking in, and especially those customers that maybe are getting a car for the first time or less than perfect credit, they really understand their situation and when they're coming in prepared to have that conversation so that the dealership is able to help advocate for them with the lender.
Is some of the things that David was talking about, I mean, talking from the credit and credit bureau side, or would you agree with his assessment as far as what he was saying, as far as what people should do with their bumps and bruises and how they should manage themselves?
Sure, absolutely. And I think it's something that, when you're going in, making sure you have that understanding and that story to be able to say, hey, something's happened, be able to explain that to the folks that you're talking with at the dealership so that they can go ahead and communicate that over to the lender. It really changes the discussion. It makes them a lot more comfortable with who they're buying, and certainly having that story. So it's not just, hey, I'm a score anymore. I understand that there's a person there, and I understand that there's going on in their situation. That really can make a big difference.
And what are some of the other things that you guys are looking at, or you guys are hearing or feeling from the population as far as what? We're talking about your specialty being on the automotive side, as far as making it easier for these customers, regardless of their credit scores.
Sure. Well, I think the customer experience when buying a vehicle has come into a lot of discussions lately. Certainly, there's a lot of folks that don't enjoy going to a dealership and buying a car. So a lot of what we're focusing on and looking at is how can we improve that customer experience, make it a faster experience, and have less kind of back and forth between the customer and the dealership. So some of what we're looking at is things like being able to verify employment and income without having to send a customer away to go get a pay stub, being able to go ahead and provide a report that has a very complete and easy picture of the customer so that a dealer can get a snapshot of that without having to dig through a big file. So just in general, we're trying to speed the process up for folks. We're trying to give a more complete picture for not only the dealer, the customer, but the lender. So everybody can be on the same page and really comfortable and confident when they're making their decisions.
You have such and David or Jen, I mean, both of you chime in on this side. I mean, you have the internet and websites and things of that nature have become such a huge part of that automotive side and that automotive lending, automotive buying. What's your feelings on, people going out, finding the car they want, and then, they do have the opportunities to do credit apps online with whatever dealer that they're dealing with and then get pre-approved. Is that something that you kind of recommend, or?
Well, I think there's really two schools of thought there. I think it's great that the internet provides more information and more education, because with education, more knowledge is power. I do think that just in any other aspect, especially when you're making as large an investment as a car, that you have some people that are experts in the area that can help guide you. And, Jennifer had alluded to the fact of having that trust and rapport that goes on at the dealership. And I think for, many, many years, if you had less than perfect credit, you were kind of it wasn't a real pleasant experience to go into a dealership and try to secure a car loan, where I think now it's more widespread and people are more sympathetic to the fact of what's going on, and they're really looking to work with people. So I don't think it's a bad idea to do it online, but I'm kind of old school, I guess. I do like the idea of having someone that knows what they're doing to kind of help you and guide you through that process.
And I would agree with that. I think one of the things, just as a precautionary tale, is obviously don't be submitting credit applications on every single website. So I think if you have a relationship established with a dealership, if you've kind of got that level of trust, going ahead and doing that up front so that when you get there, they have a clear picture is certainly acceptable. But to David's point, I think a story goes a long way when you can explain and sit down with somebody and chat through, what's going on. And I just think in general, if you can just be prepared to take those couple extra steps in the process, I think that's the best way to go.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, inquiries on the Bureau affect your credit score. So, if you're going to shotgun it to so many different lenders, that's another thing to certainly keep in mind. But I will tell you that I've seen multiple situations recently where credit scores, the client themselves didn't think they would qualify for a lease, and simply with a good history and a good story and reasoning for the bumps in the road, we were able to secure leasing for them.
We're seeing in general, too, from a credit perspective, folks and lenders are starting to approve more. You get larger balances that are increasing, and certainly leasing is picking up. So I think there's a lot more programs and avenues out there for folks that have had credit challenges. And I don't want to forget those folks that have thinner files or first-time buyers, because many times they have a similar process that they have to follow as well.
Absolutely. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to revisit this some more with Jen Reid from Equifax and the Doctor of Credit from D&M Leasing, David Hooks, right here on the AnE Show. First out, before we leave, I want a big shout out to Charlie Reeves down in Houston. Thanks for joining us, Charlie.
Charlie's on?
I don't know why you said I didn't know why you said I wouldn't like her. I like her.
Everybody says they're not going to like me.
We sent you info. Try and get y'all emailing.
I sent her some very provocative pictures on email. I got no response at all.
Yeah,
No,
the problem was the blocker caught those.
Charlie's listening in Houston.
Dude, you absolutely know no bounds. You know that?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me?
No, Charlie's listening in Houston. He's on Facebook.
That's
Actually, I started messaging him, but
It's just partial.
is that you? I
Thanks
said,
for
no, it's Doc.
I appreciate the extra 5 hours.
You gotta love you some Charlie. I've been teaching him the wild world of how to get into networks, and he's actually taking to it pretty well.
Chewbacca. You can get that Chewbacca noise queued up.
Oh, yeah. Out of all we started to segue into it a little bit. We're going to go into talking about some leasing and stuff like that. And
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. And I mean, it's really very true about the. I mean, I'm getting 517s done on
hey,
with
do you have a
206.
card on it?
I do.
Give it to Joel. Let Joel post your info for.
Is that correct?
You might not want to bring the 517 up with a business card, because then you're going to have a completely different
Well, I was just saying as a point. And if you look, I didn't really want to go into it, but if you look at the fact that a lot of credit scores right now are not indicative of what their credit really is.
Yeah.
Where you can look, this 517 really at worst should be in the low 600s in reality. But, your risk score, how it's calculated, just doesn't really, get that. And I agree, I really don't want to, because there's a lot of 517s you can't do.
Well, that was what we were talking about yesterday. That's kind of our go
You
forward.
could have that one,
All right.
because it's the last one.
Okay.
That's our go forward, is you're more than a score. Like, you're not, I think everybody got so hung up the last couple of years on scores that they forget the bigger picture. And a score is one component of a person.
I like that.
So is that something as like a tagline that you guys are using?
Yeah.
And we'll say something. AnE.
Mention the ghosts as well. People that just, look at clubs and bars.
Ghost.
Like that.
Wow, you learned a term. I'm impressed.
Learn something every once in a while.
You're listening to the Automotive News and Entertainment Show, right here on 1190 AM.
Welcome back to the AnE Show. This segment's going to be brought to us by Dodge City McKinney. Check them out online at dodgecitymckinney.net. Going forward, one of the things that talking to Jen yesterday and this morning and something that, Equifax is kind of pushing is that, people focusing too much on just their score. And I think your tagline is kind of, you're more than just a score, which dealing with credit every day like myself and David deal with. I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, it's something that we see every day, and there's so many other factors that can go into this. But we started to at the end of the segment, you brought up leasing, and so wanted to segue into a little bit of that conversation and see where we can go from there.
Well, and I think what we're seeing from our side is we're seeing a lot of captives stepping up in leasing, but I think what's a great story is some of the lenders that are out there that have these lease portfolios and are buying really aggressively as well. And David, I think you're from one of those lenders that does predominantly leasing.
Well, we do predominantly leasing. We do some purchasing as well, but leasing is really our forte. D&M, the largest consumer leasing company in the country. So, and we definitely have found that. I don't want to distract completely from credit score, because I think unfortunately there's a lot of still arenas that just focus on what that score is, and they don't get a chance to get that background, leading back to what we talked about as far as applications online. But if you have a good story, and Jen and I were talking about this at the break there, that there's a lot of situations where your credit score itself may not be indicative of what your credit history is. And without that information and without that story, it's pretty hard to speak to the lender to convey that information. But I'll certainly tell you that leasing over the last few years has really, because of the overall effect that the economy's had on people's credit scores, it just seems that the lower scores were still capable of getting done. And the nice thing about it is that in leasing, because you're dealing with a different structure as far as interest rates or money factors, if you qualify for a lease, if you're a 600 FICO score, you're going to qualify for the same money factor that someone with a 700 FICO score is going to get. So it does, produce a real good avenue for people that may have those credit issues.
Well, and you talked about, the people and looking at their credit and looking at their credit history going back. And I think that's one of the things that we were touching on, based on, what happened starting back in 2008 with the downturn in the economy, the layoffs, the unemployment. And I think if, the opportunity for these banks to go back, and they have definitely loosened up. I mean, they got really, really tight there for a few years. And I think now that they're going back and being able to see this, and see where, and you brought this up earlier, about the timing of when maybe their bumps and bruises happened. And I think being able to go back and look at their credit history before that time and after that time, what have they done since then, whether it was, they got laid off and now they're back to work, what have they done since then? And granted, those bumps and bruises may have affected their score going back into you're more than just a score. I mean, those things have allowed these lenders to kind of open up, look at these things, like you said, put a story together, tell them exactly what happened, get more background on the customer, and be able to get them a loan that works for them.
Well, I do think lenders, I think rightfully so, lending did need to tighten up for a few years, because I think things were kind of out of control. And I do applaud, the repositories like Equifax that really try to paint an accurate picture of what these individuals, credit risk is. And I think that's a good thing. As far as them loosening back up, I just think it's an idea of realistically looking at what happened. And the stories that we're talking about are stories that, people may have had a job loss. There may have been a health issue, an overall downturn in the economy caused their business to go bad. So all of those things are realistic, and they're not really, created by the individual being irresponsible and not paying their bills properly. And I think that's what any lender's looking at, and that is their overall risk of that individual paying their loan. And if you can prove that there's a good history of that and a good risk of that, again, kind of regardless of score, I think that's what it's based on now. And I think that's the proper way to look at it.
Well, and I think a tale of caution for everybody is that what we're starting to see is those loan terms kind of ticking up. We're starting to see advances, which is the amount you're financing as it relates to the value of the vehicle, getting higher. Especially for folks that maybe have less than perfect credit, taking a look at the options, because getting in and extending your term to afford a payment does not necessarily put you in a better position and can really hurt you in the long term. So on that road to recovery, I think it's important to look at your options, and leasing is certainly a great one when you can consider that you could get into a shorter term contract, get it reestablished, get the right vehicle for your needs at the payment that meets your budget. So I think it's something that folks really need to take a look at as an option for their budget.
Where do you see, I mean, and David, you touched on this, and Jen, please pipe in on this as well. Like you said, I agree with you, David. I mean, going back to before '08 and right around there, I mean, the credit and the way the money was being lent, I mean, it was just Harry Carry. It was just give it away. And I think you're right. I think they did need to tighten up because it was really out of control. I mean, some of the things that we saw, and we were kind of amazed at what we saw. I know we've seen some of those things over the years. But where do you see this going now? Do you think that where we are right now is the appropriate type of buying sense as far as the lenders are concerned and as far as the way things are being reported to Equifax?
Well, I think that I think we're leveling out because I think originally it was really very tight and probably too tight. But again, it wasn't necessarily. It was just the Wild West, and we needed to calm that down. And then I think the pendulum kind of swung to the other side for a little while, and maybe it was a little too loose. And I think we're really kind of coming back to that medium ground right now, and I think it's taken a little bit of time. I don't think we're there 100% right now, but I think we're probably the closest we've been in the last 5 or 6 years. And to touch on what Jen had said earlier, it does become really important, again, when we're talking about credit overall, is to be able to make the proper educated decision on what you're doing. I'm seeing, and Jim, I'm sure you are too, that we have people that finance for 60 or 72 months and they keep their cars for 36. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. And with the over advances, like Jen had said, those only work for a certain period of time. You can get yourself so far behind the 8 ball by over financing that it comes to a point where lenders are not going to take that additional risk. So that's another thing about management of what you're purchasing, advice from people that know what they're doing, that can set you up for success rather than set you up for failure in the long run.
When folks that bought cars over the last couple of years, we think back to that clash for clunker time, folks are probably in a pretty good position with their cars right now, and they definitely need to consider that, with used car prices high, they really need to look at, does it make sense if they're coming out of a vehicle at 36 months, if there is negative equity, which is obviously where they owe more than what their vehicle's worth, to be making another car purchase after 36 months. The flip side to that is, hey, it might be the right time because used car prices are high to go ahead and get another vehicle. But, they really need to sit down and do the math before they go to the dealership and get those numbers put in front of them.
Well, and one of the things to that is, there was it was a year and a half ago, they were talking about that the average car on the road was, 11 years old, 10, 11 years old, which was by far the oldest it had ever been. And obviously in the, the new car market, you saw the market go from, 18 million a year down to 10. I mean, it was, you're talking about a 60%, or 40% decrease. And now it's back up. I think it's going to come in around a little over 16 million last year. So that side is back. And I know that from talking to people around the industry and in the business, I mean, what they're seeing these trades that these people have held on to. I mean, you're seeing 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old cars. You're seeing more 150,000-mile trade-ins from that point. The question becomes, are those people going to stay in that kind of trade cycle? Is this big boost just, basically all these people had to come out and they had to buy something. I mean, you're getting 150,000 miles, even if you don't owe anything on it. Realistically, you probably have a payment because you're having to fix something all the time. The older the car, the higher the miles, the higher the cost of maintenance. Do you think that the market will go back to, people wanting to trade every, 3 years, 3.5 years, 4 years, or are all these people that are coming out of this cycle that have been, in it for 8, 9, 10 years, was that just a part of the downfall in the economy, or are we seeing a change in the market and trading cycles because of the fact that, number one, the cars today compared to what they were 7, 8 years ago are tenfold better as far as quality and things of that nature?
Well, I think that comes down. I know at D&M we're really on top of the fact of managing the lease or purchase process. So it's not just a matter of a conversation with a client that takes delivery of the car and that's the last time we talk to them. I mean, we check in with our clients every 3 to 6 months. We, update the mileage. We look at market swings. If there is a swing in the market that puts them in a better financial position, and it may be, 6 months or 8 months or 12 months prior to their lease or purchase terming, then we take a look at that. And again, I think that comes back to a change overall in the industry and the fact that it really is about that customer relationship, working with people that you like and that you trust and that really want you as a client rather than a car deal. So they stay with you for an extended period of time, and they're able to kind of guide you through the waters of the business. We do this every day, Jim, you and I. Typical clients don't, maybe do it once every 4 years or once every 5 or 6 years. So they're going to, have to rely on us for the expertise that we have.
Yeah, no, and I absolutely agree. I think it's something that, look at the budget, right? If you're somebody that needs a predictable payment each month, then maybe leasing's the way to go, so you're not in a situation where you potentially have some high repair bills at year 4, 5, and 6. If you're somebody that just doesn't have, you're a cash buyer, you prefer not to have a payment, potentially you're a used car buyer. But I think it's about understanding your situation. And the great thing that's happened over the last couple of years is there's some great resources online to be able to go and do some of that upfront assessment. And I think that makes the process a lot easier when you're coming in and having the discussion, when you can kind of educate yourself on tools like leasing, financing, and even some of the programs around your CPO vehicles as well. I think it's really important because I think to your earlier point, you're going to find that there's some middle ground. I think there's going to be still some cash buyers that are cash buyers. You see rates going up, so I think you'll see some folks that potentially, kept their money in the market. Maybe they cut to return to the cash buying. But you look at leasing. I think you look at financing, and I think they're very viable products as long as they're used in the right way for the right situation. So I think you'll see some normalization, but you'll still see similar patterns to what you saw prior to the recession.
Well, that's some great information. And listen, anybody out there, if you have any questions or anything, send us your questions in via Twitter, via Facebook, and whether they're for us, whether they're for Jen, whether they're for David, send us in your questions. We'll get with them, make sure that we get back to you on that. I want to thank Jennifer Reid from Equifax. Thank you for coming in and joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you. And we'll be right back on the AnE show with Paul Salfin, the coolest guy in Dallas, and his interview with the great Aaron Paul and his movie Need for Speed, right here on 1190 KFXR.
Hi. Thank you. We're going to stick around, talk about mullets and cheese toast, wait for the show to take a left.
You don't have to go anywhere. You're more than welcome to hang around because we got nothing to talk about in the fourth segment.
Dave
Well,
will make
how long
it
does
up.
it take to get to the airport?
Yeah, I can start talking about some stuff.
From here?
Which one?
If that, from here.
DFW?
Yeah.
LBJ, 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Probably should get going.
Okay.
We've got a 11:30, 12 flight, so
You can listen to it on the way out.
we
Yeah.
might just do
Tune
that
in to-
though.
It was so
tune in
nice
to
to
Talk about all
1190.
that. I'll hear how many Canadian and Atlanta jokes we get.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. If I can ever be, I'll give you my card if I ever need assistance.
Please
All
do.
right.
Thanks, nice to meet you.
Yesterday was great.
Nice to meet you. I'm sorry to know
Nice
you.
to meet
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet
I want
you.
gorilla
Oh, good to
pictures.
meet you.
I need it.
Okay, it was such a great time.
I'll leave you my card too.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you. I'll get you guys set up.
Nice to meet you.
Try some stuff out.
Oh, it's nice to meet
Thank
you.
you. It was really
You didn't
nice
have
to
a
meet
handshake.
you.
You had like one of these. She wasn't sure if you were like
So,
robbing
any ideas,
her.
let me know.
I just
I got my own little test lab, so.
The G.
I don't know. I didn't.
Here's one of my cards if I can ever.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
I used to cut the hair off and use them as targets.
Thank you.
Thanks so
There you go. Ever.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, y'all come visit us.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, we'll be out in the hot land.
As long as I don't have to go through the
And if you're ever in Atlanta, let us know.
I might actually
you
be
really?
a zombie extra. on
Hopefully it was a
Walking
warm
Dead.
day.
I don't know.
We had some really crappy weather.
Yeah, let us know when you're in town.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks. Bye.
Paul, you want your own mic?
Uh-oh.
But then I'll have to miss the
And I
view.
miss
of the
you.
I know. When are we ever on the show together anymore? So sad. Crossing each other.
Had too much to drink that night, but you're.
1 minute.
Whose headphones are these?
Oh, those are hers.
Ben's.
But, I mean, it's
Oh,
not,
They're
they're not
bands
hers.
and just
All right. Unless they're automobiles. Do you want that? Or?
Or you just finish that?
No, there's already one.
Yeah, 871, 455.
Do you want these then?
Don't know what the horsepower is, but it's going to be cranking over. They're figuring about 1,100.
Oh.
30 seconds. Beautiful piece of work.
Seconds. I play all the Need for Speed video games.
Did you play those?
Oh, yeah. I love them. So I'm very familiar with them. Pat Love, Toyota McKinney.
I honestly don't think the movie has anything to do with
Oh,
it.
it doesn't. Well, the video game never has a story either. Oh, the newer one.
You're tuned in to the Automotive News and Entertainment Show, right here on 1190 AM.
Yeah, that's true.
Welcome back to the AnE show, and that was some great conversation with Jen Reid from Equifax. We look forward to talking to her again in the future. Right now, what I'd like to do is pass it off to the coolest guy in Dallas and Jennifer Reid, and let's talk about a little bit of entertainment and talk about the great Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad and his new movie, Need for Speed.
Yeah, it's a really fun movie. In fact, we got to see it. There's this advanced screening that was on the IMAX, and it's one of those big, fast, loud movies, kind of like a Fast and the Furious kind of film. And Aaron Paul and the director Scott Wall were there, and we got to talk to them the next day. But it's one of those ones that I think people go to. They need some good escapism. It's based on the popular video game series, and I'm actually not sure how much it actually has to do with the video game. Joel, I know you play the game.
It's a long series. I mean, I had the original one back on the original PlayStation. Mm-hmm. That's how far back it went. So,
PlayStation.
Yeah.
I like it.
So, and it's evolved into what it is now. And there's at least, I think, 20 games. Mm-hmm. And the first set, you'll pick a car, you go race. That's all it was. Then it evolved and said you pick a car. You have that car, you soup it up, win races to buy another car, soup it up, and so on and so forth. Now there's storylines to them. It's like you're actually a person. As far as I know, Aaron Paul's character is not part of that story.
Yeah, but it's a whole lot of fun, and I think like a lot of these video game turned movies, it's just more of a branding thing. Right. But they did well with it. And what's interesting about him as a lead, a male lead, and a romantic lead. Honestly, it's a little strange, But he's been doing so great, crisscrossing the country, promoting this thing. They've been doing every stunt and everything that they could, and he's a really, really cool guy. And
I heard there's no CGI.
Yeah, that's the most amazing part about it. They have some absolutely ridiculous shots in this film. In fact, if you've seen Act of Valor, it's the same director. And so he knows how to make a compelling action movie. But an interesting thing about it, they have this one shot, and I don't think I'm ruining anything because it's probably in the trailer, but where a car gets picked up by a helicopter and just kind of gets towed off, and you're just going, oh, come on. And then you find out that it's real. You're like, oh, wow, that's pretty impressive. So it's there are a lot of completely ridiculous things in it, but unlike Fast and the Furious, where it's all planned out and there's a lot of CGI, this is the real deal. So it kind of makes it a little bit more exciting.
Right. Well, let's listen to that interview with Paul and Aaron Paul.
Well, congratulations on the film. This was so much fun to watch, and I was amazed to learn that these stunts are real. I mean, I know you come from a stunt family, but geez, some of this stuff looked impossible.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, right? Because people get them in today's modern films, it seems like it's just a big CG fest. And I grew up on these car movies, like Bullet and French Connection and Smokey and the Bandit, and I still believe you can still do everything for real. And it's really funny because some people come up to you after they see the film, they go, was there any CG in that movie? And because they're just so used to it, and like, no, there's none. And people have a hard time understanding that this is all real.
Now, were you worried about hearing this because you had to be in the car?
No, it actually just made me more excited about the project, that he actually wanted to take on that challenge, because you just don't see that anymore. And that's the whole thing. He's like, I don't want to lie to the audience. I want the audience to, wow, that looked like it actually happened, you know, and that's what's so exciting about this film. And you know, when we first started talking about this project, he said, listen, if you want to take on this role, I need you to really take it on. I need you to be in the driver's seat. I need the audience to know 100% that you are the one that was driving these cars. And you know, so I'm going to need you to learn how to drive like this. And so that, of course...
That was Steve McQueen, right? Steve McQueen did his own stunts, and even Burt Reynolds was a stunt man before he was an actor. A lot of people forget about that. And with my films, I just wanted, like I told Aaron, man, you need to drive.
Yeah, and that just, you know, got me very excited. And I love that he wanted to do a throwback to the films that really started this genre, and some of my favorite films, you know, Bullet, Vanishing Points, Smoking the Bandit. There's such fun, just raw, gritty films, and you know, great stories, and so that's what this film, you know, has.
Yeah. What would you say is the most high-octane moment that you'll never forget?
You know, I think just one of them will definitely be the Utah sequence.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's just never been done in a film, and it was something that we prided ourselves on the movie because nobody said we could do it practically, and we pulled it off. They wanted to do it in CG, and I refused, and I said, we're going to either rewrite the sequence or we're going to do it for real, and we did it for real, and I'm really, you know, really proud we were able to do it.
We drove a car off a cliff
and caught it with a Mustang, with a helicopter.
With a helicopter. I mean, that actually happened, and it was just, it's ridiculous. I actually had the most fun there too. We're climbing over the rocks. And it was great.
Well, the show is the Drew Pearson Show, and Drew famously called the Hail Mary pass. I think everyone has a Hail Mary moment in their life. They just kind of had to go for it, and it worked out. What do you suppose that was for you?
I feel that way about every movie I do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always extremely nervous before I start a film if I could do it again. You know, and can I live up to everyone's expectations, and can I make a film that I'm proud of? I'm always, I mean, maybe it's because I was a stuntman. Yeah. I'm always willing to take some severe risks.
You got to do the stuff that kind of terrifies you a little bit. You know, that just kind of makes you push harder.
Yeah. Now, what do you suppose your show pitch moment was? The moment that you knew you were discovered?
I mean, I think probably for me, I mean, I've been working in this business for many years. I mean, I was on a series even before Breaking Bad, but I think Breaking Bad was my, you know, thing that kind of pushed me over the edge.
Yeah, mine was Act of Valor. I think it really, you know, exemplified what I was really trying, the kind of style of filmmaker I was trying to be, and really show that, you know, realism and still can be a part of entertainment.
Now, besides the behind the scenes moment that you really realized that, oh, this is all real, besides the car being carried by the helicopter, what was it that made you realize that this is going to be the movie that people are going to remember?
I mean, the day after I wrapped Breaking Bad, I worked on the final day of the show. I got on a plane, arrived in Mendocino. I got to work 6 in the morning the next day, and to see, like, coming to set, to see just helicopters flying around that were part of our production, seeing, like, you know, how many supercars? 7 supercars we had. I mean, the first day was just so crazy, and we were just doing such crazy races and driving, and it was just, I knew, you know, we definitely were part of something super special just because he wanted to do it all practical.
Well, we're so excited for you, and congratulations on the film, and we'll look forward to seeing more from you soon. Thank you.
All right. Well, that was the coolest guy in Dallas, Paul Salfin, with the great Aaron Paul, and talked a little bit about how, you know, Breaking Bad was probably his breakout moment, and I totally agree with it. I can't. I mean, I've seen every bit of that series, and I can't imagine that show without him. I mean, he was. And I don't know that when that show first started, I don't know that they thought that Jesse would become as big as he is. I think, you know, he was I mean, he was kind of the second behind Ryan Cranston, but I mean, Jesse Pinkman, I mean, he's, you know, kind of a legend now with all of us, but you know, it sounds like there's a lot of real interesting stunts and things like that in this movie.
Oh yeah, it's fun. And if you're a car guy, you'll like it. There's there's so many cool cars in there and so many.
Yeah, it
neat
does
tricks.
go off like the game where they have like all the higher end models,
Mhm.
like all the Lamborghinis, Ferraris, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think people are going to really like this one. So go see it in IMAX, and it'll be fun. And I was going to say also this week out is the Veronica Mars movie, which we were talking about during the break. And I think this is interesting because, I'll be honest with you, I've never seen the show, but apparently it was one of those shows that a lot of people really, really loved, and it got canceled because, the rating system is a little screwy. So they put together a Kickstarter and they made this film, and, Warner Brothers has it out right now, but you can also downloaded it as well if you were part of this whole thing. And that's an interesting thing too, because do you guys prefer to see movies at home, or do you prefer to go to the theater? Or
I fall asleep either way, so I guess it wouldn't really matter what location I was in. But
yeah, I think it. I think it's a great. Sometimes, I don't have time to go to the movies, so to have it, be available at home, immediately is pretty cool. A lot of times, if I have to wait, I'll forget that was a movie I wanted to see, because by the time it rolls around to get on pay-per-view or things like that, you just don't have that opportunity. I'm just wondering what effect it's going to have overall on box office and things like that.
Yeah, well, the theater-going experience to me is something that's really, really cool. And for a movie like Need for Speed, it's great because you can, you can see it on the IMAX. It's loud. But a lot of people have great setups at home. Like, would it be a bad experience at home if you had a nice TV and a nice stereo? No, not at all. It'd be great. But there's really no replacement for actually being at the theater. But for something like Veronica Mars, I mean, I haven't seen it, so it's hard for me to say, but I think that's something that you could probably watch at home and it would still be enjoyable if you're looking forward to it. I mean, half the movies I see, I'm happy to just watch from the comfort of my own home.
Well, Paul, I want to thank you for that great interview with Aaron Paul, and I'm going to go see Need for Speed. I'm really interested to see that. I'm a big Aaron Paul fan, so I'm really looking forward to doing that. We're going to take our final break right here on the Automotive News and Entertainment Show and come right back with
mullets.
And cheese toast.
Cheese toast, whatever else we can figure out to talk about right here on the A&E Show.
I think cheese toast is like trending now.
They actually, and it's funny because I've lost about 25 pounds, so I've been watching what I eat. And they had an article about, things that were supposed to be wholesome and good for you. And the old tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwich. Yeah. And it's terrible for you.
Oh, yeah.
Tomato soup has so much sodium in it, and the processed cheese, and I was like, quick thought that I want to hear this.
Yeah.
It's a staple food here.
I know all the stuff I love is terrible for you.
Like macaroni and cheese. My son hates it, which is weird. He doesn't like anything normal, like easy to make. So he's like, let me just make some homemade meatballs. I'm like, seriously? He doesn't eat more than 5 things.
I went to Del Frisco's Grill the other night and had truffle.
What did you want?
Macaroni and cheese.
All right, so real quick, Jen, what have you been up to? Because we want to kick into that. I want to kick into that and maybe let Paul talk a little bit about South by Southwest. Joel's got a little bit he wants to kick in about St. Patty's Day, and so we'll come back, and I'm just going to kick it to you, and I'm just going to kick it to you, and then when just find out what you've been up to, and then kick it over to Paul about being down at South by Southwest, and then.
Let me get my my phone number in there once.
Yeah,
I got on the Facebook page.
We're getting Jen's phone number in there once.
I know my stalker's listening, so.
Do a shout out.
Oh yeah.
Hey, freak.
Coming out on pay-per-view or things like that.
Yeah, he was trying to show it
that's just
to
a
all the
movie
men.
you must see at the movie.
Yeah. Gary photoed it. I was
The whole,
posting. He goes, oh, I'll see you
just
guys there. I'm
straight
like,
to that movie. You seen it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Was it amazing?
Yeah.
I
Just using the
okay, yeah.
Are you using the business number?
Yeah.
I'll do it real quick when we come back. Just because it's easier. It's just easier to transpose into everything. I'm not listening to you.
Okay, good.
La 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 la. I'm on the ship. But yeah, Gravity is one that I think is totally important to see in the theater because if you can. But if not, it's not like it's going to be bad at home. I mean, I think most people have a decent TV now with decent speakers, you know. Like,
sure.
It's not like...
To go to the movies is expensive.
Yeah.
$10 for a ticket, $20 for popcorn and drink.
Yeah.
Just about.
I mean, you go to the movies, you're going to spend $30.
Oh, yeah.
And do you have a day, you're going to spend 50 or 60.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and you know, to buy them now, you know, so you get like at Best Buy has like the sales every year, it's like 10 to 20 bucks, you know?
Right.
But on average 20, but like that's less than going to and then you get to keep the movie. And now the...
You're tuned in to the Automotive News and Entertainment Show, right here on 1190 AM.
Welcome back to the AnE Show. One thing I want to point out, once again, I want to thank David Hooks for joining us. If you have any more questions about leasing, you can contact him directly at 972-239-2222. His extension is 404. You can also reach him at dhooks@dmautoleasing.com. You know, it's been a lot of things going on here lately. I know I've had some stuff going on, Jen and Paul. You know, yesterday we shot some interviews with Jen Reid from Equifax. We also did some shots with the Drew Pearson show for the draft day segment. And Jennifer, I know you've had a lot of stuff going on. You've been traveling a lot. What have you been up to lately?
Oh, you know, just hunting mullets and eating a lot of cheese toast. No, I've just been shooting a lot. Like I've kind of taken a moment. We actually had vacation last weekend, which is kind of nice to get out of town. But yeah.
What's that?
Huh?
Vacation?
Vacation? Oh,
I've
that's
never
something
heard of
that.
that.
Yeah.
Paul lives on permanent vacation.
But you know what? He lives in like a different world than most people do. He lives on like an
Mars.
awesome.
Well, that's why we keep him here. He's living the dream, and
We're like
we're just able to
looking at
touch
like,
it,
hey.
you know, poke it.
Yeah, I've been shooting. I actually shot with a guy named Steve Ellinger in Abilene. I've never been to Abilene, so it was kind of a interesting.
I lived out there for 3 years.
Did you?
Oh,
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think I was on the more industrial side, so he said, no, there is other stuff out there besides, you know, the industrial. But it was fun, and then just been kind of just hanging out, so... But yeah.
What kind of industrial shots are these? Are you like wearing like
you know,
a little bikini?
Chains and handcuffs and all that good stuff, right? Yeah, but
We'll
no,
be
so
posting
not as
those
exciting as
pictures.
what Paul's been. I mean, you went to South by Southwest. I mean, how was that?
That was a whole lot of fun. I certainly
Did you
wouldn't.
wake up on the side of the road with a cheese toast sandwich? Or?
No, there's no sandwich stuck to my face when I woke up. Thankfully, everything was pretty civilized. I mean, it's really, really sad what happened down
Well,
there.
yeah.
But you know, honestly, I'm not surprised that hasn't happened earlier. In fact, some people down there were saying that, oh, this has happened a few times.
Wow.
You know, in Austin. But the thing is that you've got all the national and international media down there. So CNN's down there anyway, and they're like, oh, what happened? You know, and of course it's a big deal because you're worried about people's safety. But I mean, this could happen anywhere.
But you
at
have
any time.
incidents like that. But I mean, most of the time, I mean, they're accidental.
And yeah,
and
they're not
I don't want to push anything on this guy or give him any publicity that I think he's just for one reason or another trying to get. And you know, David pointed out earlier he may not like what's coming down the road now, but you know, I mean, it's a horrible thing that happened, and to have the mindset that he had to do it is just absolutely ridiculous. And
yeah. But besides that whole thing, because I
we're like, oh,
I wasn't even
let's
down
get on
there
the
for
good
that.
stuff.
Let's not bring it down, because you know, the South by Southwest is such a big thing for not only this area, for a lot of people. It's a big thing for a lot of for the film week, for the interactive week, for the music week, and there are so many people down there that we got to talk to. In fact, in the coming weeks, you'll see some great interviews coming out. We got to talk to Nicolas Cage, Jason Bateman.
How is he to interview? Is he like
Nicolas Cage?
Is he like all over the place, or is he kind of?
Yeah, you know what's funny is he's exactly how you'd expect him to be.
He's just so weird. He's so like, just I don't know. Sketchy.
Yeah,
sketchy,
what's
I guess.
funny is I've interviewed him before, and he's actually gotten a lot better, or I guess I should say it just depends on what's going on, because they usually have him interview with somebody so they can work off of him, because if you're not But if you're not talking to him directly, he kind of shuts down a little bit. So, kind of like how we're talking, everybody kind of stays engaged. He kind of disconnects if he's not part of that answer. And it's kind of funny just to see someone kind of space out like that. But he's an interesting character. There are a lot of in fact, I just saw a thing this week of interesting facts about celebrities, and he's on several of those. It's like the top interesting facts that you don't know about celebrities, and he's got all kinds of weird things about him. But he's totally cordial. I like him a lot, and he's a fantastic actor. And the film that I talked to him for is called Joe, and that's like his return to Academy Awards style filmmaking. So
he's kind of been out of it for a little bit. Like I haven't.
Yeah, I mean, he made some questionable films and some not so good sequels, but he's really sort of back on it. He looks good. He looks healthy. And I'm really happy for him. And the director of that film, David Gordon Green, is from Richardson, so kind of a good Texas tie
local
there.
flavor.
Yeah, but we ran across just about everybody there, from Zac Efron to Seth Rogen to
I saw that photo you put on there. You're like, he makes everybody look just a little bit unattractive.
Yeah, actually,
that
was one of the funny quotes from Seth Rogen. Is that I said to him, everybody keeps talking about the scene of Zac Efron without a shirt. Are you trying to make us look bad? And he goes, I had to stand next to him without a shirt on because I felt terrible. So it was pretty hilarious there, and there's so many good moments down there. It's such a great time at South by Southwest. If you haven't been, I highly recommend going.
I'll have to go next year.
Yeah, despite all the trouble.
Faux show.
No, we don't. Like I say, you don't focus on the trouble. It's our hearts go out to our hearts go out to the families and the people injured down there, and I'm sure that they'll take precautions to maybe tighten up security or
even
whatever
in
they
Dallas,
have to do.
today the parade. I mean, it's just like I guess they're going to probably have a lot more.
Yeah, and that's something that Joel was going to talk about was what's going on today with the St. Patty's Day celebrations.
St. Patrick's Day parade, this time every year, down on Lower Greenville.
Mm-hmm.
Green beer.
So I was at the first one. What was it? It's like 6-7 years ago. And when they had a small parade around in Lower Greenville, and they had a big concert with the Toadies headlining. That it was all like $5 just to get in to see the concert. It was great. But I haven't been back since, just haven't had time. But I remember
it's grown tremendously.
Yeah, exactly.
Since then.
Yeah, it gets bigger and crazier. Ludacris is playing this year.
Oh wow!
And he's someone that we've had on the show before, and he's great. But it looks like it's gonna rain pretty bad, which is gonna make for an interesting
wet t-shirt contest.
Yeah.
Weren't there some issues
will you be
that
down
they
there?
were looking at as far as safety down there? Or?
just the normal drinking and driving. So if you are going,
yeah, there's always that, and there's a
responsible.
no refusal weekend. But think about that concern. Think about the South by Southwest concern, because anybody at any time could plow a car into any area. So it's I'm wondering what kind of precautions the police are taking just to make sure that because it really taints things. Because people, then
they are
next
more
year,
cautious, which is a good thing. Being more cautious.
Yeah, I think it's a responsible thing not to drink and drive. So I mean that's certainly on an individual level, but for those that maybe don't have that maturity, I think precautions are good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree, and I would say there's probably no doubt they're probably tweaking up security and police presence down there just because of what did just happen in Austin.
Sure, yeah. I mean, because then what's going to happen is next year at South by Southwest, they're just going to bring it up over again. And, of course, Austin, the city, is going to do everything they can to make sure everyone's safe. And I know that they're really beefing it up right now. But, we definitely don't want that connected to the Greenville Avenue Parade. So definitely take an Uber, folks.
Uber.
Well, everybody, just have a good time this weekend and stay safe. And I don't know what's going to go on with the weather. It sounds like it's going to get a little brutal later on in the day. I don't know how much that's going to dampen the spirits tonight.
There'd be plenty.
At least there's no ice. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Because that whole thing was just a little bit irritating.
Well, there'd be plenty of wet mullets out there, but they'll still be out there.
Smelly wet mullets. That sounds.
Ruin the cheese toast.
I know. Well,
Don't
actually,
ruin the
why don't we?
cheese toast.
We should put up a cheese toast stand out there.
I think
We need,
should.
you know what?
Yeah.
We need to incorporate in our little funny photos on Facebook. We need to actually incorporate the cheese toast. 'Cause that's become a very or all of us
We
wear
put
mullets
it back
one day.
up there yesterday.
The cheese toast?
Yeah.
It's up there?
Yeah, there's a new cheese toast.
Hey, hashtag cheese toast, everybody. Let's trend it.
Trendy. Oh, that looks really good. I'm like really hungry right now. Can we talk about that? Like what I want to eat?
Cheese toast trending nationwide. Hashtag cheese toast.
I like it. It's finally taken a left turn. It always happens.
Always do it, and it's my
somewhere
fault,
on
but
the
it's
show,
all right.
but somewhere mullets and cheese toast make their way
It's
in.
just become a mainstay. I think. I think we set
At
up
least
a
it's when I'm talking about
stand.
squirrel. Well, squirrel meat's another one.
Yeah, I think we set up a stand down there, and we let Jen cut hair and cut some mullets and
I can cut a sweet mullet. I used to.
yeah.
Well, we've talked about it. I used to have a pretty awesome one, so I kind of know like the dynamic of the mullet.
I'm
and
pretty sure everybody
I
in
have
this
a
room
book.
had a mullet at one time or another.
I have a book dedicated to the different styles of mullets, which is pretty.
The Kentucky
I bought that. Yeah.
Hey, we want to thank everybody for coming out today. Want to thank Jen Reid from Equifax for joining us. Thanks, Joel the Gorilla. Thank you to the lovely model actress Jen Reid. The coolest guy in Dallas, Paul Salfin. Shu doing some media. Ben on the board. And David Hooks from D&M Leasing for joining us. Also want to thank our sponsor, Dodge City McKinney. Check them out at DodgeCityMcKinney.com.
KFXR Dallas with all the top news and business stories of the day. It's all on 1190 AM.